Tom, how you doing?
Very well, Aaron. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. So, did you get to hang out at the Liberal convention at all?
Nope.
No?
I don't miss it. I've been watching it, and I've been talking to people who are there, but no, I wasn't going to go.
Okay. And did you run into Marilyn Gladu anywhere?
I know Marilyn Gladu, and she's somebody I quite like. She's one of the most pleasant people I met in my time in Parliament, and I wasn't surprised. She's exactly the type. She's very much like Matt Genereux, the fellow from Alberta who crossed over to the Liberals, or Chris d'Entremont from Nova Scotia. These are the types of people who are not hard-bitten partisans. They're not the type of people who wake up in the middle of the night trying to figure out what sort of dastardly plan they can come up with to ruin the other party's lives. They talk to people in all political parties. They're interested in what happens to the people in their riding, and they care about Canada. And I think that it's a message to Pierre Poilievre that his type of politics isn't sitting well with a lot of the people in his caucus. And yeah, she's held different views over the years, but she says she's quite comfortable now, being with the Libs and going along with their point of view. And honestly, Aaron, I think this is very interesting. I'm not a big fan, by the way, of floor crossing on principle, because I think that when you get elected with one party, you should stay with them. But on the other hand, it's part of our system. I mentioned it to Trudy this morning. Winston Churchill famously went from one party back to the other and then back to the other. He kept going back and forth. And so it's part of the British parliamentary system. That's our system. But in terms of the principle, it's not great because people vote for a party and their policies, and they should be able to have that. But since it is part of our system, let's look at the mechanics of what's happening now. We've got the Liberals who are on the cusp of having a majority. All they need is to win one of the two by-elections in Toronto on Monday. They'll win them both because they're both safe Liberal seats. The one was Bill Blair's, who was a Liberal minister. The other one was Christy Freeland's. Yeah, they're not going to have any trouble holding on to those two ridings. Terrebonne's going to be a bit more of a dogfight, but I think if the Liberals do manage to win it, it'll be largely because of the fact that Quebecers really like Mark Carney. And we'll see whether they can hold on to it. It was won, as you remember, by one vote, and then the result was overturned by the Supreme Court.
So, when I asked this question of our audience earlier, and I said, what do you want to talk about today? A lot of people wanted to weigh in on this floor crossing. There are some who will believe there's a conspiracy theory out there, Tom, that clearly Marilyn Gladu didn't do this because she just likes, I guess Mark Carney or the Liberal position, but because she's been, quote, bribed with something. So explain, when people say bribed, I'm sure there are people out there who believe she got some kind of a cash gift, which obviously I don't think she did. But what's involved in crossing, and would discussions have ever turned to, if you join the Liberals, there might be a cabinet post for you? How does that work?
They'd have to be very careful about that because you wouldn't want there to be any perception that there was a quid pro quo. You come over to us and then you get something. But if I were you, Aaron, I'd keep an eye on the Sarnia region, which is where her riding is, and see if there's not a long-standing request for some government intervention, because it was once a heavily industrial area. As you know, it's lost some of its luster over the years, and I'm sure that there are lots of great projects in the area that might get even more attention now that they'll have a member of the caucus of the Liberal Party, the governing party there. And I think that that's part of what it is. You're somebody who's well enough liked in your region. Gladu won 3 times. Every time that Trudeau won, he won 3 times. In 2015, 2019, and 2021, she got elected for the Conservatives. Mark Carney comes along, juggernaut. The guy's really popular. She still wins for the Conservatives. But she's looking at another, it's like a sentence, right? She's got another 3.5 years to go, and she's looking at the clock, and she's looking at her riding, and she's looking at the fact that Pierre Poilievre doesn't really look like he's ever going to be elected, to lead a government where he would be the Prime Minister of Canada. And she's going, I want to take care of the folks in my riding. And I think that was her, the basic part of her thinking. So no, I don't think anybody would be crude enough or dumb enough to make a straight up offer. But don't be surprised if wonderful things happen in the Sarnia area over the next couple of years.
Yeah, to which I said to the couple of callers who suggested that, I said, well, imagine, as you just pointed out, Tom, that she could go back to her constituents in Sarnia and say, hey, look what I'm now able to do. I don't know, pick a major infrastructure project or something,
exactly.
Which she never would have been able to do while a Conservative. Is that a bad thing?
No. And that's why the system exists the way it is. Sometimes it could be on high questions of principle, but Marilyn Gladu was just, a good person getting reelected and wasn't able to do anything. And I also think that there's a strong message for Pierre Poilievre and the type of person who's leaving his caucus. Because I just described 3 very good human beings. I know Matt Genereux, a good guy. And, I know Marilyn Gladu, good person. And so I'm not surprised to see them just sort of, putting their palms in the air and saying, I'm not going to stick around with this guy. this is not the type of person I am. I don't like what I'm seeing here. And crossing the floor to somebody like Carney, who has got a much different take on things.
So I'm going to move on from this, but I just want to ask the last part of the story, which seems obvious, is what does this say about Pierre Poilievre? What does this, portend for his future as leader of the party?
I know I work in the private sector as well, and a lot of the people I work with are of the conservative persuasion, and a lot of them liked Poilievre enough to try to help him get elected leader. He was their guy. And now they're just looking at what the future is, and they've come to the same conclusion, hesitantly, but they've all come to the same conclusion that he's never going to get elected. He can't win. And so that's the thinking. And I got debriefed by somebody, a long-time senior conservative today, and somebody who had no axe to grind with Poilievre, but who just said, no, the things are in motion right now to find someone to replace him. And I gave a couple of names of people I thought who would be on that list. And the person just said, yep, 2 of those 3 are definitely on the list of people who would take the party over from Poilievre.
Well. All right. Let me move on from that and talk about what's going to be happening here provincially. There will be a new leader, a new premier, actually, by the end of the weekend. Christine Frechette, Bernard Drinville. The voting is already underway. It's been underway for a couple of days. What do you see going on here?
I think the Frechette's still got it. I think instead of it being like 80-20, that it might have been, like 2 weeks ago. I think it's going to be more like 60-40. But I think she's got it. She's a fresh face. She would give the CAQ a chance. If Drainville wins, it's a godsend. It's just an absolute gift for the Quebec Liberal Party of Charles Milliard. I mean, to have Bernard Landry, that was a good slip of the tongue. Bernard Drainville as your opponent would be amazing, because the guy's just like, he's just been terrible in this leadership campaign, attacking a member of his own party who was way ahead of him. He thought that was the only way that he had to get ahead. Some of the elements that are the strongest on the so-called identity issues, Simon Jeannet Barrette, who went after religious minorities with Bill 21, went after the English-speaking community with Bill 96, and so forth, that he's on board with Bernard Drainville. I don't think anything else needs to be said if you want to understand who Drainville and what side he is on this stuff, whereas Frechette is not of that ilk whatsoever. So we'll see. I mean, will the old-time crowd, this is very 1930s Quebec politics that we're looking at here. It would be a time machine if Drainville got in, and it wouldn't last very long because the CAQ would be absolutely eliminated. There wouldn't be a single seat left in the next election if he became leader, not even his.
By the way, someone else had an interesting theory that after this is all over, you could see, if Bernard Drainville loses, him just rejoining the PQ. You think that could happen?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I will point out one other thing. I don't know if you saw that poll, QC 125, suggesting now the CAQ are doing so badly that they run a minimum and maximum number of seats they could win in an upcoming election. The number goes
the minimum is 0.
Yeah, and the maximum now has gone to 0 as well.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
What?
The only thing that keeps them afloat in the polls is if you go into the deep polling by somebody like Leger, you'll find one number that still counts a great deal. The percentage of French-speaking Quebecers willing to vote for the CAQ with Christine Frechette as leader is higher than that of the Quebec Liberals under Charles Milliard. So that is a little bit of a glimmer of hope for them. But 1, she hasn't won yet. Yeah. 2, we don't know what the campaign's going to look like. And 3, I keep getting back to the essence here. 75% of Quebecers want nothing to do with a new referendum, want nothing to do with separation. They're going to have to be smart. They're going to have to vote strategically. And the way it's lining up right now with the CAQ, heading into the dumpster and the Conservatives not going anywhere, is that Charles Milliard and the Liberals are on the runway now and getting ready to take off. And once they do, and all of the forces who are against separation, against the Parti Québécois, against another referendum, are going to say, okay, this is the vehicle we've all got to get on board. It's going to be the Quebec Liberal Party under Charles Milliard. The only person who might have a chance of somehow turning that around a bit is Frechette, but again, she's got to win, and then we got to see what type of campaign comes out.
We'll leave it at that.
iHeartRadio is throwing it back.
2010s, the decade.
To the days of huge hits and unforgettable anthems. A non-stop stream of the biggest and best.
Drake, Rihanna, Beyonce, Katy, Gaga, The Weeknd,
and more. All your decade-defining favorites, all in one place.
Hi, it's Katy Perry.
Hey, it's Bruno Mars.
This is Kesha.
Find 2010's The Decade on the free iHeartRadio app. Preset the station so it's always one tap away.